Apply. Sometimes in the theater of geopolitics, it is not the words themselves that echo loudest, but the reaction they provoke. In the Russian Far East, apply at a glittering economic forum in Vladivostok, the cameras captured a moment that reverberated far beyond the walls of the hall. President Vladimir Putin, standing firm at the podium, apply, issued a stark warning to the West: do not send troops to Ukraine, not even under the banner of peacekeepers. If some troops appear there, he declared with icy precision, apply, especially now while the fighting's going on, we proceed from the premise that these will be legitimate targets for destruction. The audience, composed of Russian officials, apply, business magnates and allies, erupted in applause. A chilling ovation, applause for the threat of destruction. It was a moment heavy with symbolism. Apply underscoring not only Moscow's confidence, but its deliberate defiance of Western resolve. The timing was no accident. Just one day earlier, apply, Kiev's allies, the so-called coalition of the willing, had pledged to form a reassurance force to protect Ukraine after the war. Apply, a sign of Western determination to secure peace and prevent another invasion. Putin's reply was clear: Russia rejects these guarantees, and any Western presence would become a target. Apply, the Russian leader went further, suggesting he might be willing to meet Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, but only on his terms, only in Moscow. Apply, the best place for this is the Russian capital in Hero City, Moscow, Putin said with another round of applause swelling through the hall. Outside Russia, apply. The proposal was dismissed as unserious, political trolling dressed as diplomacy, yet it revealed something crucial: the Kremlin's current stance on the war is uncompromising. Apply, peace is acceptable, but only on Russian terms. Without that, Putin insists, Russia will achieve all of its objectives militarily. Behind this confidence lies a constellation of factors. Apply, on the battlefield, Russia believes it has regained the initiative. Diplomatically, Putin has cultivated powerful allies. In Beijing this week, apply, he smiled and shook hands with world leaders, from China's Xi Jinping to North Korea's Kim Jong-un, presenting the image of a Russia not isolated but embraced in India and beyond. Apply, he projects an image of strength, an alternative to what he calls an American-dominated world order. And then there is Washington. Last month, in a moment that stunned many, apply, U.S. President Donald Trump welcomed Putin to Alaska for a summit. Kremlin commentators hailed it as a victory, proof that the West had failed to isolate Russia. Apply, Trump has threatened sanctions, deadlines, ultimatums, but so far he has not followed through. Putin praises Trump's peace efforts, calling them sincere. Apply, even as he rejects every ceasefire proposal. This paradox, acknowledging Trump's role while conceding nothing, has only emboldened the Kremlin. For Ukraine, apply, the path is very different. President Zelensky has been clear: Kyiv seeks peace, but not at the cost of sovereignty. Ukraine looks to NATO, to Europe, apply, and to security guarantees that would deter Russia from striking again. Western allies, from Britain to France, are mobilizing funds, weapons, and sanctions. Apply, determined to keep Ukraine's defenses strong. On Wednesday night alone, Russia launched more than 500 drones and 24 cruise missiles at Ukrainian cities. Apply, underscoring the stakes. And so, two visions collide. Putin speaks of light at the end of the tunnel, but as light leads to a Russian victory, territorial control, apply, and a new global order tilted toward Moscow and Beijing. Ukraine and Europe see another tunnel entirely, one that leads to peace through security, reconstruction, and independence. Apply, different tunnels, different roads, different destinations. Tonight, the world confronts a dangerous reality, a war that shows no signs of ending. Apply, a Russian leader who refuses to compromise, and a West still searching for a strategy that might bend Moscow's resolve without breaking Ukraine's future. Apply, at the heart of Vladimir Putin's uncompromising stance is the battlefield itself. For the Kremlin, military momentum is the single most powerful bargaining chip. Apply, and the perception, both inside Russia and abroad, that its forces hold the initiative is central to its strategy. After more than 2 years of grinding war, apply, Russian commanders claim to have reasserted dominance along key sections of the front, particularly in the Donbas region. Though Ukrainian forces have fought fiercely, apply, Russia's relentless use of drones, cruise missiles, and artillery has allowed it to sustain pressure, striking cities and infrastructure far beyond the front lines. Apply, the barrage of more than 500 drones and 24 cruise missiles in one night is not simply a tactic of destruction. It is a signal, apply, a demonstration of capability meant to remind the world that Russia can escalate at will. This battlefield confidence has been carefully nurtured in Moscow's domestic narrative. Apply, state-controlled media depict Russia as steadily advancing, slowly but surely wearing down Ukrainian resistance. By presenting the war as one of attrition, apply, Putin positions Russia as the side more capable of enduring a long conflict. This calculation rests on the assumption that Western unity will weaken. Apply, that support for Kiev will fracture under the weight of costs, and that democracies may tire before Russia does. The Kremlin, after all, Apply is not constrained by public opinion in the way Western leaders are. There is also the matter of symbolism. Apply. The Kremlin insists that it has secured and integrated territories in eastern Ukraine, portraying them as irrevocably part of Russia. Apply by repeating the claim that residents of these regions opted to join the Russian Federation despite widespread condemnation of the referendums. Putin frames any retreat as unthinkable. Apply. It is not only about land, it is about legitimacy, about proving that Russia cannot be forced into concessions by Western pressure or Ukrainian resilience. Apply. Underlying these military calculations is an old Russian doctrine: wars are not merely contests of firepower but of political will. By keeping the initiative, Apply. By holding the line and striking deep into Ukraine, Putin believes he is demonstrating that Moscow's will is stronger, its endurance greater. For him, Apply. Even the perception of battlefield momentum feeds into diplomacy, giving Russia leverage in summits, forums, and negotiations. The message is consistent. Apply. If Ukraine and its allies refuse to accept Moscow's terms, Russia will simply push forward militarily until its objectives are met. Apply. This is why Putin speaks of light at the end of the tunnel. For him, that light is not compromise. It is victory achieved through force, sustained through attrition. Apply. And cemented by the belief that Russia, not the West, can outlast the conflict. Beyond the battlefield, Vladimir Putin has sought to reinforce his uncompromising position through diplomacy. Apply. Weaving a web of alliances and partnerships designed to blunt Western pressure and project the image of a Russia that is far from isolated. In Beijing, Apply, at a grand military parade meant to showcase Chinese power and defiance of an American-led order, Putin was photographed side by side with President Xi Jinping. Apply. The symbolism was unmistakable. Two leaders presenting themselves as architects of a new world order, one not dictated by Washington or Brussels. For Putin, Apply, these images of unity are as powerful as any tank or missile, proof to his domestic audience that Russia is not standing alone. China's role is particularly critical. Apply. While Beijing has stopped short of formally joining the war effort, its economic support and diplomatic cover have been vital for Russia's survival under Western sanctions. Apply. Trade between the two nations has surged, with China providing markets for Russian energy and supplies that help keep Moscow's war machine running. Apply. Xi Jinping's willingness to host Putin, to stand publicly beside him, signals that Russia retains a lifeline even as Europe and America try to squeeze it. For Putin, Apply. That lifeline is a pillar of confidence, one he can point to whenever the West accuses him of international isolation. But the network extends beyond Beijing. In India, Apply. Putin has nurtured ties that stretch back decades, securing continued purchases of Russian oil and weapons. For New Delhi, this is partly a matter of national interest. Apply. But for the Kremlin, it is another shield, another crack in Western efforts to construct a united front. Even more striking has been the embrace of North Korea. In Beijing, Apply. Putin met Kim Jong-un, who pledged full support for Russia's military campaign. North Korean state media even claimed that troops were being offered to aid Moscow. Apply. Casting the partnership as a fraternal duty, whether symbolic or material. Apply. These declarations bolster the narrative that Russia's war has global backers willing to defy Western pressure. Apply. Diplomacy also plays out in the theater of summits with the United States. The Alaska meeting with President Donald Trump was hailed by pro-Kremlin commentators as a triumph. Apply. A dramatic break in Russia's supposed isolation. Putin has been careful in his language, praising Trump's sincerity while rejecting his ceasefire proposals. Apply. The contrast is deliberate, acknowledging Washington's importance while denying it influence over Moscow's decisions. By doing so, Putin projects confidence. Apply. Portraying Russia as an equal power that cannot be coerced into concessions. All of these maneuvers serve a larger purpose. Apply. To demonstrate that Russia is not merely surviving, but shaping the global order in its favor, whether through handshakes with Xi, deals with India, Apply, or pledges of solidarity from Pyongyang. Putin's message is consistent. The West may oppose him, but the world is far larger than the West. Apply. And as long as he can marshal these partnerships, the Kremlin believes it holds the diplomatic strength to match its military defiance. While Russia hardens its position, Apply, the West finds itself in a complex struggle to balance pressure with diplomacy, searching for a strategy that might alter the Kremlin's course. Apply. At the center of this effort is the United States, where President Donald Trump has taken an unusually personal approach to Vladimir Putin. By inviting him to Alaska for a summit, Apply. Trump effectively pulled the Russian leader out of international isolation, signaling a willingness to engage directly even as the war rages on. The optics were striking. Apply. Two leaders seated across from one another, the weight of Ukraine's future hanging in the balance. Trump insisted he had made his red lines clear. Apply. Warning of further sanctions and consequences if Moscow refused to compromise, yet his failure to follow through on those threats has been noted in Moscow. Apply, and it has only reinforced Putin's belief that Western resolve can be tested, even bent. For Ukraine and Europe, this creates unease. Apply. President Vladimir Zelensky has urged Washington to move beyond words and impose sanctions with teeth. Apply, pressing Trump to escalate measures that could meaningfully restrict Russia's ability to wage war. In London, Defense Secretary John Healey echoed this frustration, telling the BBC that the United Kingdom and its allies were prepared to increase both economic pressure and military assistance. In his words, Apply, Putin's dirty money would be returned with interest, referencing the £1 billion in seized Russian assets recently converted into aid for Kyiv. Apply, Europe's message is clear. There is no room to back down, no space to allow Moscow's terms to define peace. The European response extends beyond economic measures. Apply, leaders from France, Poland, and across the coalition of the willing continue to advocate for a post-war reassurance force in Ukraine. Apply, a structure designed to guarantee Kyiv's security even after the fighting stops. French President Emmanuel Macron has been particularly vocal. Apply, seeking American backing for a plan that would give Ukraine credible long-term protection against another Russian invasion. Apply, these steps are not merely about today's battles. They are about shaping tomorrow's security architecture, ensuring that Ukraine's independence is not permanently undermined. Apply, but challenges persist. Western unity, though robust on paper, is constantly tested by political divisions, economic fatigue, and the sheer duration of the war. Apply, sanctions have been far-reaching, yet Russia has adapted, redirecting its trade to Asia and relying on allies to cushion the blow. Meanwhile, Putin exploits every delay, every hesitation. Apply, to argue that the West's will is faltering. For Western leaders, the task is to prove him wrong, to maintain cohesion long enough for Ukraine to resist and rebuild. In this struggle, Apply, the stakes are larger than Ukraine. They are about credibility, about whether the transatlantic alliance can enforce international norms in the face of defiance. For Putin, Apply, Western warnings without follow-through only confirm what he has long believed, that Russia can outlast its opponents. For the West, Apply, the challenge is to demonstrate that resolve is not just a word but a force capable of shaping history. At the center of this conflict lies the most difficult question of all: peace. Apply, what does it look like, and on whose terms will it be built? For Vladimir Putin, peace has always been conditional. He has made clear that Russia will not relinquish the Donbas. Apply, that Ukraine must abandon its aspirations for NATO membership, and that what he calls discrimination against ethnic Russians must end. Apply, these demands are not simply negotiating positions, they are red lines. By drawing them so firmly, the Kremlin transforms diplomacy into a trap. Apply, either Ukraine accepts Russia's framework, or the war will continue until Moscow believes it has secured victory. For Kyiv, these terms are unacceptable. Apply, to concede the Donbas would mean legitimizing annexations carried out under fire, erasing the sacrifices of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians. Apply, and leaving the country vulnerable to future aggression. Apply, President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly stressed that any peace agreement must safeguard Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. To meet Putin in Moscow, Apply, as the Russian leader has suggested, would be politically and strategically impossible, tantamount to acknowledging defeat before talks even begin. Apply, Ukraine's message to the world is that peace without security is no peace at all. Western allies share this concern. In Paris, London, and Warsaw, Apply, leaders speak openly of a reassurance force to defend Ukraine after the war, pledging not to allow history to repeat itself. Apply, French President Emmanuel Macron has framed this as a defining moment for Europe. Apply, one where the credibility of Western promises will be measured against the durability of Ukrainian independence. In London, Apply, John Healey has emphasized that military aid is not just about sustaining the fight today, but about ensuring that Ukraine's skies, seas, Applied land remains secure long after the guns fall silent. These commitments, however, Apply, collide directly with Putin's vision of peace, one that would exclude Western guarantees and cement Russian gains. Caught between these two irreconcilable paths, Apply, the search for peace often feels like a dialogue in parallel tunnels. Putin speaks of light at the end of the tunnel, but for him that light is a Russian victory. Apply, validated by concessions from Ukraine and the West. For Ukraine and its allies, the light is a ceasefire backed by enforceable security guarantees. Apply, an end to the bloodshed that does not compromise sovereignty. These are not different interpretations of the same goal. They are entirely different destinations. Apply, this is why the war feels so intractable, why every diplomatic overture seems to dissolve into rhetoric. Apply, until these visions converge, or until one side forces the other to accept its reality, the guns will continue to fire, the missiles will continue to fall. Apply, and peace will remain as distant as ever.